Susriye Namo Tamashriye Soha. Om Namo Manjushriye Namo Susriye Namo Tamashriye Soha.
Ready to go live. Good morning, Genla. Tashi Dale. We're looking forward to hearing about the 57 afflictions this morning. And good morning, Katrina. Thank you for your translation. Welcome to everyone online. We'll begin with some motivational prayers.
To the teacher endowed, transcendent destroyer, one thus gone, for destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one gone to bliss, nor the world supreme guide of beings to be tamed. Teacher of gods and humans to you, the Buddha endowed, transcendent destroyer, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paid 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, then I bow. With pure bodies, formed supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner, the best supreme guide, to you I bow. With the supreme signs, face like the spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not, incomparable, wise one, to you I bow. Great, compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to the Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms. Unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom too, well established in the trainings. The holy field, endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame, a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble, a dream, a flash, a lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all seeing, subdue the full faults, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, 4 lands, sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you. May all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy gurus, in the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, all the meaning of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam Guru Ramnamandalakam Niyatayami. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the to the Dharma. I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
Oh, yeah, this is
Yeah, Diksongela.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Tunica, sir. They are Geshe Bushawale Solero. Oh, me too, Latin, and it to me show Chiletu. To the Chin and Yaka, Mombatus, Nimalos, Sheson Patas. Oh, yeah, cause. Around the Tawakata, Jovachuson and Milide. Quadang as on get to electricity. Quadang as on get to make the castle of our tracing. Crucian Botandava in Songua. Me too, Latin, and is. To me show Chiletu. That to the town, to the Lianero. Any ne song down queer to me Tadalapa, George Chetu Sona. Me too like an any to me church letters. Oh, the 2 day, double day, Shisu, Maubana, Tawarish, Nejuka would Esongora, 20 chin and Yakaves, Mombas, Tamonse Mates, Kobocha Mates, Songora, Mombatus, Nima Lose. To see you have a capilla, to think till 10 pound rare, Toshi Machi, Nikushetene, my dear. She done to the machine we chat, searching my tongue, and they good day do so. Nilo, the day, Marasuna, Tumbushi Teura, Catula Meta Teletan and Drogosam, or the Desi Tumbushi Teura Mato, Niku when I see Chisum de Sam Bevice, Matusum Gudua. Ah, Tisilana.
So, as the great master Shantideva has said, using the boat of this human life, we can traverse this ocean of suffering. As this is something extremely difficult to find, you fool, this is not time for sleep. So here, in dependence upon this human life that we have right now, with all of the freedoms and leisures that it provides, we have the ability to traverse this ocean of samsara's suffering, the sufferings of the lower realms. If we use this properly, it's like we're in this kind of ocean of suffering, but we have in this life a boat, a vessel, a great boat that we can cross that kind of ocean. And so while we have this sort of opportunity, we shouldn't remain kind of stupidly or like in a stupor or in sleep, but rather recognizing that this kind of a life is something that we have found just once. This isn't something we get again and again. We should, while we have this opportunity, take advantage of it. So while we have this chance, it's not the time for sleep. It's not the time to remain sort of ignorant and sleep, but rather we should be alert, awake, using this kind of opportunity, not remaining in that kind of stupor, but being really alert and awake, taking advantage of this opportunity that we have in this human life.
Oh, yeah. Oh, the Casura. Then did to me Tadala Church, to get to that drive. Then you can be little about this, and they send it to Tondalia. Send it to Negapik. Messicate and sit on that you will and go corny. Then I'm a duty Sungora. Take my boy, give a tangy. Do my say, give a tendo pembe, tendo. Quada to millet, Nesson to millet, Tapchel Jungle, Esora. Oh, Tinduka soda. Send it some jet all a chava mayba. You are tangent to much to push. Oh, Tindu. Tituvala, Titu, but Sushi with it. Oh, to Sushi with it. Tindu. Next, Compolo in Jebe, Umar and Jeshawa, Davina, the mother Tangeli to see the Tapsin Malava Sungare, or Tesu Tabachane, Tabata Samba Combation Rembi, Simja Tamje get turned to be. Turn to Bendiva Yungi, Kirkuse, you de Kundeji, Kansa, she to you are a cha, Yamdu, Sanji Kovan Tawa cha, Yamdu, 대체도니 우마른지 중앙다 볼래. 저리야 터바셔. 대삼로다. 대 양내 양도 공부하시기 삼네. 군노세 때문에 삼버쇼스. 안돼.
So right now we have this human life with all of the freedoms and endowments to be able to traverse this ocean of suffering, to get out of all of the sufferings of samsara and the lower realms, but to really remain in a kind of stupor, thinking about only the happiness of this life, rather than striving for something that is actual, stable, lasting happiness beyond just this life. We should not remain attached to the happiness of this life, but rather think about the kind of greater goals that we can accomplish on the basis of this life. And in order to do that, we need to know the methods by which we are able to use this life in a way that we can get rid of not just the suffering of this life, but of all future lives. And so it is on the basis of hearing instructions like this from the precious Garland of Nagarjuna about the 16 methods for accomplishing good rebirths in the future, as well as the methods for achieving definite happiness, that we are able to pursue such a goal. So here we should think that in order to not just benefit myself, but to benefit all sentient beings, I'm striving to become a being who has eliminated all faults, who has developed all good qualities. And in order to get to that place, I am listening to these instructions from the precious Garland, and not just listening to them, but going to contemplate them, going to meditate on them in order to be able to achieve such a state. So we should set such a proper motivation for listening to the teachings.
뭐야? 동안 저 리웅가 바데임바. 저 인도 가서래. 전주 선배 줘봐. 시다 랍중 군기 허르 전주 선배 줘봐. 김바다 랍중 군기 라버차베. 랍치 땡기도 왔던데. 인도 티 가서 거르잖아. 얘네 뉴도 산제지 고반 토반 되베. 가서래. 요도 산제제 고마 토반데베 김바다 러도 중에 전주 선바 강인 야스고라 아니 또 대단 데리아 랍쿠레스 도르덴바데 케셔로 니체다 당부들 도르네들라 테네 랍도 중와예 당부 니카서 랍라 랍쿠차세 네네 그도 소소타르바 들제다 네네 그래 만두 Tenden avla kim atir. Te solo ga tambo de sri karsung do sena. Te tabi rab do chunga is. Ta tambo de tanda tama telia kebo ge. Roa chanju samba kebo de si kyang ya de. Chodan tumba kyang ma du che chawa che na ma do ma de be ne kap che lep sona songora. Milia chawa che ko be ne kap che ma do. Chodan tumba shiwa da chawa me be to ne. Chambada tsewe tone ya si de kyantube kuka mena songora tene te shashab kawre songora ngaranzo de ten sa me de bchena susu si gi wanja tobe tandalya te shagma harba motu la soba yang jalangirwa motu lan ma bu chena o me ma su go nge lung ba si chi chi ngu sam susu le kyap jo yung gu sam ya motu langir ma do motu che nga me se gi me se nga kesi shagin senge o sigmarwa te chanju semba ke mao bale soso yongju de soso range yongju le chigi wara ngaranju chigi marwa kyo chima chiji wara sta ha yeshe che me she kare na o yore sa che ma do chigi one trane soso nyangu de samsa chigi marwa chendele ta garwa mikashe ke lo chunju samta tanga me chi ya ke gore lo chembe kabla 강에 많이 와서 땅보다는 내가 대시 세우래 삼기도가 가셔대 상마라 요새라 마음 가리나 인삼 단다 삼르다 내 마음 벌 강에 와한테 시기도 하티나시라 최날까 남배 최날 가르치고 있으니 깨왕아치 요래시고라 류부디 제 루요마도 샘디 게데 그 누구 제제 류면도 할 때네 남시 중부다 국보다 텐데 드라마도 차네도 되요라 Tiende Kiwangama ran le tin shebe to tangi ware. Aradu bu chunju kan si ro wache ne ro wache ro. Mahobali yong ju kabli yong ye chi na te wa tunge kari na ti so se te tu sigi wara. Tinde nywa chi be to no tanga Millet Sawachene, Simja Mamutinde Sene, Geshe Kambatida, Dragmedu Samne, Geshe Letankara, or Tisunda, Geshe Letane. Tachan Josembagane, Rabdi Chune, Karakarichegurestico Sumbiara, what is Shana?
So then here we have arrived at the fifth chapter, which teaches the trainings that are for all, both bodhisattvas who are householders and those who are monastics. So these are the kinds of things that should be trained in by both of those. If one wishes to quickly attain liberation, then one should take up ordination, it says. And even if one does not take up ordination, it's going to teach a brief kind of exposition of the points of bodhisattva deeds, what should be adopted and abandoned for householders as well as monastics, and then give an extensive explanation. So here, previously, we had seen that he advised the king, if you are unable to rule in accordance with the Dharma, in a way that advocates for non-harm, that has love and compassion for your subjects and others, then you should, in turn, give away that kingdom. You should give up that kind of rule and instead pursue monasticism. So here we can see that, especially these days, when people take up political power, they don't usually set aside non-harm, right? But rather instead engage in things like warfare with the purpose of, say, protecting their land, their people. So it becomes quite difficult. We don't even see really how it's possible to rule in a way that would not involve harm, that would not involve violence towards others and acting in ways that are contrary to the Dharma. So here, often we don't even in our own lives act in ways that really accord with the thought that we are going to take rebirth, right? Maybe we sort of are proceeding along like, well, maybe there is, maybe there's not, I don't really know. And we act in ways that are more short-sighted, right? Some of us maybe have a sense of, oh, well, I need to avoid doing this or engage in this in order to achieve happiness and avoid suffering in the rest of my life, in the future of my life. So when we're young, we maybe make certain decisions that we think will protect our happiness in the future and make us avoid suffering. But some don't even have that. We're sort of so short-sighted that we're only thinking about what's in front of us right now. So in Buddhism, though, it's not just about this life, right? But there are future lives. And so we have to recognize that we are going to cast off our body and our mind is going to continue on. Our mind will take up different kinds of situations, some in which we don't have the ability to really think and pursue the Dharma, others in which we do have that kind of alertness and intelligence to be able to pursue the Dharma. And so it's in the same way that we sort of think about, most of us, what will happen in our life later on as being our own happiness and suffering, right? We take that into consideration and we try to avoid suffering. We try to pursue our happiness. So therefore, we need to think about our future lives. What are we doing that will ensure our happiness and help to avoid, eliminate our future suffering? Not just this life, but future lives.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that is from the Sholoka Tambuti Karshigdosana. Tene Rabdu Chunga Yeris, what I Gabush, Rabdu Chunga Shisha Shisha, Chidan Kurabchunga Koda Choguranyamdo. Rabdu Chunga Yeris, Tambu Labla Kubarchar, Susu Labjakari Natalia, Rabdu Chunga, Sumja Kare Roa, or to check Karaku, Karapanku, Karacheku, Titisura, or Rabdu Chunga Ye. Tambu labla, susu labjatila kushev tachade, deva tachade, ne yamsula gure, chakure, sungura, tambu labla rabkuchas. Ne susu tarwa dujetas, the teba chaku saka shonde karisa, susu tarvendo, duendo mambu yora, or to susu tarwan dulcetas. And a mount tende of la kimse, mount teba, tende $2 soba tezu sonja kari sonja na o de tenla amne tina shene susu nyamle la langle la tare la tim gure songora pesu che che gure songdo ya tijilamna
So here, then the teaching in brief comes in this first verse, where it says, then having become a monastic. So here again, under the premise that the king decides to give up his kingly rule and become a monastic, he needs to know what it is that he should take up and what he should avoid. So this is going to be something that that Nagarjuna respectfully explains to him. So here it says, then, having become a monastic, you should first become serious about your training, focusing on the pratimoksha along with the vinaya, and also becoming learned in determining the meaning of the precepts. So here, one should then really with great respect, look at the various trainings, particularly in ethical conduct. That's important at the beginning, knowing from the various scriptures like the Sutra of Individual Liberation and other Vinaya scriptures, you should study those with a great deal of seriousness, pursue that kind of study, learning about them, and then determining the meaning with great focus. And therefore, you should come to know completely the points that are to be adopted and abandoned.
Oh yeah, that matter. Oh, that. That in the rabdu chunga, sutim ge labaria tambu kushepchene, yabutini, sunkure, sunkura. Tabache sade, sutim ge labakadaka, shongla taburesena, soso taban dulce dansera, doan durtu se te tutaburesera. No, tene long dumbushi is to tutaburese, doan chebada. That the long trenches said, do a shingudua, long trenches say, shong tamba said, oh, can you look she said, oh, it's a dog for this sort of. Do do da, do she that chebada. Can you some la mother to what that and that you shall do the move it and do it and the tesoria to what you would say. Oh, to what you did, Baba. Did do a love to join some jay. Sitim Jilaba Tempe do it, do to Sukanga Tene. Did tell of the timber chene. Love Jene sober. Sheber Chaos, or to do Shilam de Don Jeba.
Mm.
To be told to her, yeah.
So, just to give a little brief part of the commentary, here he says that having given up the kingdom, that kind of rule, and taking up monastic vows, then first you should respectfully train or guard well your ethical conduct, the practices of ethical conduct. And to do that, one needs to first study well, hear the various scriptures from the three baskets, but in particular, those like the Sutra of Individual Liberation and the Vinaya scriptures, the four-part Agama and so forth, those that are related to the Vinaya trainings, those that are about ethical conduct and how to train in that. And then having looked at those scriptures and determined their meaning, really focus on that and come to know completely the points to be adopted.
What a talking to do a namjero, do a namje, do a transit, do a namje, shung tamba. Any long sheet, how to do. Yeah, in Pacha, Tenica Dosina. Tasholaka Niba Derida. Niba Carado. Tene never transit shit. There is some Sholoka Niba Dere. Tene never transit shit. Nibe Shina Bambar Chas. Doa de Zola Tubachanane. Don't can't to Kanga Sunja Kanga Sheba Chanese. Transit Sheba Chanese. And Nibe Shina Bambar Cha, Niba Yon shit to some Pancores. Don't you a shit in that Niba. And corridors. No, just up there, Travanam. Bad in never talk about it. And they come to Sunja Tella. Nothing of this is some good. Kiba Raptu Chunga, Tinica, Sunja Tella. And Raptu Naptishi, they was taxation temperature over there somewhere. I'm not sure turn. Not to turn to talk about them. She said, turn to talk about them. Bad never thought of Tabarchas. Bezusan and never to chat and ship is, Rapching up to this. Yeah, Sawati Robsulana.
So here there are various Vinaya scriptures that are kind of the basis for knowing what is to be guarded in terms of ethical conduct. So having heard those Vinaya scriptures and understanding what it is to be practiced, it then moves into the second verse, which says, then you should eliminate those faults that are cited in the Kusdravastuka, assiduously learn to recognize them, widely known to be 57 in number. So here, basically learning then the kinds of faults that are cited in these Vinaya scriptures. You should learn to sort of, as well as the basis for those faults, which are widely renowned to be 57, investigating well, make an effort to abandon those various faults.
다든다 방자 납중납된 시월에 뒤하고 제제 심바 자고래 송구도 근데 뒤어데 방아제 장가자고도 다니 발라니 겨 방바다 방자가 껴디 껴 방자 껴디 시여라 이게 내랑에 거래니 뒤셔도 다 담보라 방자 껴데 나데 거쳐라 방자 껴데 뭐가 셔라
X.
나보는 기로와
Det är det.
방제 껴데라 방구라 연대들 랑구레스 다 방제들 가려서는 네 개버셔 봐도 돈돈 예시 다들 섭제 말라네들라 다당 무슨 초와서 당납중 앞전에 당가 제가 된다 초와서 당부정아 콘돌라서 배정아 지도가 정아 정서 아니 취취네 시집에 거래 시집에 미치에 또 봐래 취주네 십주 시직지도와 취주서 십주 시직제 대가는 미치에 또 봐서 지시 아니 십주 신이라 다 정해지다 십주 신이 진념도 동다 내가 좀 다다르기도 십주 간을 주점 내가 주라 근데 대정의 요리 대가는 니 접되니 십납 좀 되도 방정납 좀 되디 마 방시시기와라 야 되질람나 그래
So then one should know well these 57 faults that are to be abandoned, as well as the kind of qualities that are to be taken up. And these will be explained extensively. And then there's kind of a summary of them. So here, first is then the extensive explanation that is explaining the first 15, anger and so forth. I believe here it's translated as wrath and so forth. And then next comes the next section, which is from hypocrisy to the 41st, not thinking of death. And then there is a final section that begins with proclaiming one's own qualities, etc. And those last 16. So that then comes to 57 of these faults. So here it will then begin by explaining these 14 together with wrath, beginning with wrath.
Oh yeah, this one. No, talk about this one. Pablo some choaso chunga shebatera tatambo. Choaso chunga shebate shebatwa. Tatambo la nise. Choaso chushi shebat tambo. Kondoso chushi sheba. This one. Mula sum choaso chunga chitambo yeli shebatwa. And it's chuchu ne shibu shichi. 추주라 소바 시비 시지 직샤 네 치와 메도바 시 직샤로 시비 신이 저거라 다 시비 신이 네가래 니바랑게 연데 조바셔 버시 데모버셔 다 담불라니 초와서 집시셔바다 나게셔바 쥐앙에나네 초와서 집시셔 나게셔 쥐앙한도와 담부들이야 정해졌는데 나 예수들 뒤에 시작도 뒤찍을 당가 저도 찍을 때래도 좋아서 주시체 대가는 나 예수 정하러 어디 정하듯이 시작이셔라 좋아서 주시체 받아 나 예수 봐 근데 정하듯이 시작도 주시체 나 예수 찍을 이나 내일 가가 시체 나 세계 코라 된디 시에도 나게 매dra시 된다 장가 제디 찍나도라 아니 주야마체 당분에 좋아서 세자 정심기 출발 체질때 아니 돌에 템베 세자 그네 단 너나로 소요래서라 당부대 참모 탐제대 너나로 소요래네 레바도 봐 셰바네 시제대 장가 저요래서 되셔 ene kare woman namla ote na shin re sangmalan donali yobate ene deba kyapshima ke yores tenchu kapshi yores isungdo ya tichi lamna tambu.
So here then in the extensive explanation, it will explain these first 15, beginning with wrath and so forth. And so then when that gets to that explanation, it divides that into the 14, wrath and so forth, and then an explanation of pride. And there are 7 types of pride, but they are counted as one in the way that Gyaltsab is commenting on this. So although within that category, there are 7 kind of internal divisions, that is counted as one. And then those first 15 topics, beginning with wrath and so forth, include pride as the last one, the 15th, but that is explained as one. And then it will get into the other sorts of categories, beginning with hypocrisy and so forth, and then proclaiming one's own qualities. We don't need to go through all of the various divisions, but here then laying out the explanations as they are taught from the sutras, he is going to give an explanation of the shastras, of the way in which these are explained. And so one should know that what comes below is an explanation according to the way that these are taught within the sutras, beginning with wrath.
Oh yeah. 당가 주제 장가 저다. 초아 심비 축바데 단도 콘도 티셔도 초아 콘도데. 심 축네 네 고한데 용거라. 콘도 용거라. 심 가래 내다 심마데네 토르 심 축네. 네 콘도 사거래 셔라. 초아 심비 축바데. 대다 제데 콘데. 군진시 초아 군진시. 콘도 중원에 콘도 중화데 양자고 삼루탄제 대야 권에서 권식이란 가지고 지를 권에 지키용해서 담보 콘도사체되네 군지 군게 마티체서 야네 양도 삼루탄제 디마당하체 군지인데 쇼라 콘도제 바스 군지세 니메지 제베데 콘도체 양자 삼루탄에 그 군지지로 시도 어디를 초아 섬기 촉바데 셔라 아니 대단치 대 콘도단 대 거네 아니 군지리 거래서 원래 때네 마와야상 군지데 아니 쳐봐세 somebody 쳐봐도 그냥 쳐봐야 되라 꺼봐야 되라 그냥 봐 꺼봐야 돼 쳐봐 되고 쳐봐도 소소 되고 하면 그냥 매력 그냥 쳐봐도 쳐보게 꺼게 와라 단 도와도 되지도 않네 그 쳐봐 매가 쳐지데 근데 그냥 총소스 또 시작하셔 보라 시작하셔네 또 하는 거라 다 도와 매나 고치다 되고지 주원에 소소 되고되다 되네 미케가 되다 되쳐서 리마소 삼 시작하셔네 또 하는 거라 되고를 다해 요데 되고에 대해서 것도 시작고 시작하셔 나 다르 거라 마냐 저대나네 고티고들이 자네 리네 시샤제네 마 슐마 템프레아티 네시페샤도 야 샤바셰제 마디고레 삼베나 코 샤데 양부세제네 마티메 메거리 차기도 어딘나 빼찬송도 딘데버시 차바세 콘도 토아 군지 책바시거라 아니 차바시거라 차바 틱바 차바 되세 아니 책바 까베테라 책바 틱라 셴바 오세 책바 사야 될것 틱라 신는 거서 그 남주름 시다야 시와라 어디 뜻이거래세 야 되질랍나
So here now we're going to get into some counting. So beginning with the first of these 57, this comes in verse 403. It says, wrath is severe mental agitation. So wrath or anger, when we have that kind of anger or wrath, it is a disturbance of mind. Something isn't like how we want it or what we expect it to be. And therefore our mind becomes sort of agitated, and thereby we give rise to anger or wrath. And then second is rancor. Rancor comes from constantly having it. So when we feel like something has been done wrong to us or something makes us angry and we think about it again and again and again without letting go of that, we have this attitude of rancor where we're not letting go, we're sort of holding a grudge with respect to whatever it was that made us angry. And then we have concealment. So concealment is hiding one's negativity. Now here, we really need to, as is explained in the Vinaya, and as well as just for everyone else, that it is necessary to confess our negativities, to admit what we have done openly and say, I have done this, I have done that, and allow for the process of purification to take place. It's said that the one quality of negativities is that they can be purified. If we really put them out there and we don't just sort of like hold it within as a ball and let it kind of sink us, we have the ability to make that go away, to purify it and make it light through being open with that rather than concealing the kind of things that we have done wrong. And then hostility is the addiction to negativity. So when we are sort of hostile, we almost have an addiction of wanting to be negative, wanting to be harmful to others. So that's the fourth.
Oh yeah, that debate lo ne lo ra. Choa de dan che su tin be tam bu kon de che. De da che su tin be ne choe samlo de ma dang che yam ja samlo dang de de kun jin se ra. Ye ma de yang ja che. Choa de dan che su de wa choe jun dang du zin ba. Ra kun du zin ba de la kun jin se de se. Chaba shenji chaba sa de shenji ne ba la na ju tab ji. O tin de jun de chong sa sa na de che me se tanda ba ka ye chi wa ra. O de se. Tikpa se, duwa da tende kabli ne ko tikpa tikpa sha ku duwa, so chong se choya yora. Ti cho di zane nga la kyo tenda te chong su se tonga kari na, te sen kaga kaga se ko shakwa se ku duwa. Shakwa se ne tando yora. Shakwa ma se se ngwa le ma se se kab se sha na ko nyaa denga re sha yor no. Kondo zimba da ne ko le so. Shenji nyeba le nga se, mingu bar se be tikpa. Chaba te, Shabbat, Nicola, Chipane, Tiba, Shinemedo, Chipa said, Nima, Conto Sabat was Shine, same thing the Mata, just some Sally and Jaco, Quincy, and Nima to change the Sido, or Tisilom, Tagina Chip, yeah.
So similar to that explanation, just looking at the commentary here, it says that connected with that kind of anger, like holding tight to the continuum of anger or wrath, that's the attitude of rancor, right? When we don't let go of the continuum of that anger. And then concealment is to not, part of it is we often point out the faults in others, but here we are concealing, trying to keep others from seeing whatever faults that we have done by kind of dissimulation, not allowing them to be seen. Now, as it's said in the Vinaya and elsewhere, we engage in the practice of like sojong, the bi-weekly purification process, wherein you lay out in the different kind of divisions of negativities, the things that you have done wrong in order that they might be purified. But again, when you hold on to those things, when you try to conceal or keep them not seen by others, this is really what becomes detrimental, holding on to those and trying to not let them be seen by others. And then here we have hostility as being a kind of addiction to a negativity, wherein this sort of attitude of wrath or anger remains deep within your mind such that you don't let it go. It's something that sort of bubbles up from the depths where you're holding it.
Oh, yeah. Well, starting at the quantity, pay substitute to at the Chiba, Chitim, Savas, Tishegdoa. Chimbashi, Sutimche, and the Sabashi. Tinduko Chimbatanga, and then Chinda Sutim Sunga, Shala Sawapa, etc. Chimbatanga to launch Chibuyon, etc. Sutim Sunga, Hadami, Kawa Sambuto, etc. Chimbatanga take up the launch of Jimabumbuche, Seku Nemela Sopo Yabuto, and the Chimbatangadoa. Oh, teach Chimbatana, and the launch of the Yogure, they means that they dance Sambuchula, meaning Yogure, and the Ladami, Sawabamba, Ladami, Lutin to Yeshi to Shagdoa. Don't do Rabbil Kennedy, and to Chimbatana, and with the mean that Pesha, Yanga, Shingatabana Shipatam, Kerker Yomara, Minda Jinani, so launch a shell at Chimbatana, Mahubanda Chimbe, Yang Jashe, Kende Kona Konda Payora. Such Chimbacha, Sutimche. The server the manner thing you marry some good. Server the manner. Contra to a mambo, you would have social nation at so much. Pendochini, Shavina, mission to contra to get younger, nor the contra to get younger, Chinga contra to get younger. Or did you carry chicken by senator, server congress, Sarah? Server Magumna, Chimba that Sudim yet the lamb to Mare, Sarah. Young Mares, what at that. Raw contra 7 Chimbatan to Chimara. And then contra 7 and shall Sawashi, the mother Sawabang Mara. What the indico, Shibada, Sudim Seba Sambuta Peke, but Ese. The contra Niabolia, Seba to Comgora. Seba Magumna contra on the Tane, Chimba young Mare, and the Casa shall Sawabang, but the young Mares. Can you lamb the draw ya which young go in the Seba Congore, Sangoda? Nazo Majuba Capsule. Mitu Susu Sessions, Kadu Delicate Carosna, Condutandani, Don de Madame Tengira, Kashamji, the Mutual Segura, Rangshin, the member Segura, Mitu Susu Sessions. Tamba members, Kansa Sending Kibu Tamba, Miss Sending Tangioma, Namsan Kondo Jessie, Carriage of Kankasera, Mitu Susu, Tamba members. Sudan Twimiship and Namju Troches, Kondo Sesuna. 아니 제 초과 가래 메초과 가래 로아 가래 메로아 가래 상당 말아 가래 저 메시아 가르치고는 제샤이다 자 수단 주미시베 남주 초래 소소 뭐에 내지 가래나 야가드 가래 두가드 가래 가르치고 가르치는 되게 말한테 섬을 당겨 말해 가래네 고치셔 너도 마부셔 그러 어디 인데 고 콘도 사디 근데 깨져 마부셔 말해 가가자는 마도 되니야 Mamma Pedora, the middle Susus at Tamba members. Sudan Swimiship and Namju Troches. The Takarin or the Taraka judgment. Or Tendicasur, Social Namju Swim, the Swimiship and Namju Shora. A tipe never Sagre. Chobakare, Machabakare, Namju Yoma, the consumer you can't get Segura. Ya Tijilana. Middle Susi at Tamba Sudan Namju Troches. Monsieur by a new to me and just go. Nega Gentiri, Maubana, and so like you Sagra. Nega Gentry, you good, Maubana, Nami Drebucha, yes, like you is, Shagua. Yeah.
So here, anger is something that we should be very careful with respect to. We should really try to practice patience. We should practice patience, right? The first of the three perfections, generosity, ethical conduct, and patience, are extremely important. As it's said that through generosity, we have wealth. Through ethical conduct, a good rebirth. So having generosity or engaging in generosity is what allows us to have what we need in a future life. By being generous, the ripening results of that are that we have enough in terms of food and clothing and shelter and so forth, so that we are not without those things in a future life. But we want to have that ripen on a good rebirth, right? In a human form, not like say as an animal. So in order that we have those results ripen in a good place, we need to have ethical conduct as a kind of foundation. We're not able to use lose those kinds of results of our past generosity if we don't have a human rebirth. But if we do have a human rebirth, we can continue to be generous with the things that we have, thereby ensuring that kind of continuity of having what we need in terms of material possessions. But if we are lacking in patience, we basically undermine all of that work doing generosity and ethical conduct. I mean, even if we try to be kind to others, we try to not harm them in any way, we are going to face those who get angry with us, who try to provoke our anger, who cause us harm. And so we need to be very careful that we are able to be patient with that. If we lack patience and we immediately lash out and create harm for others, we are undermining all of the kinds of virtues that we have accumulated through generosity and ethical conduct. And so patience is an extremely important antidote to our anger, to that which will destroy the results of our generosity and ethical conduct. As it's said in the Entry to the Middle Way by Chandrakirti, he describes the kind of results of anger, both in terms of the short term and the long term. Someone who becomes angry becomes very unpleasant in their appearance, right? Their face might turn red. There's someone that no one really will find attractive. When our face is like contorted by anger, we become very unpleasant to look at. It's someone that no one wants to be around. One isn't a sort of holy or noble being. You lose that kind of status if you were there when you have a reaction of anger. And more importantly, anger causes you to, it sort of steals away your ability to know what should and shouldn't be done. When we lose our head in anger, we don't anymore distinguish properly between what it is that's proper to do and improper to do. We're so in the throes of that anger that we just act however we feel like, out of being driven by anger. So losing the ability to be level-headed and use our intelligence in order to determine what we should and shouldn't do is another consequence of that kind of anger. And so there are those temporary results, but also we lose in the future in terms of gaining a bad rebirth. Anger leads us into a lower rebirth. And so being patient, even when we think that, oh, well, I'm not harming anyone or I'm not doing anything that will hurt others, we are going to encounter those that get angry with us, those that provoke our anger. And so thereby we need to be really careful with respect to applying the antidote of patience.
미도 수수지 당바 멤버한테 수단 수미 좀 해주면 뭐지. 세배 세신 당게 연된 남제도 살아. 세배 공나 당도 콘도게 좀 좀다 남에게 대부 형한테 독초에 따다 연구를 쓴 거라. 자고 세배 공도 가르쳐 봤어. 내절에 지면량 배서봐 살아. 콘도사 메중게 될거 세배 공 그게 마삼나 미티 시치기 삼나. 나도 콘도사기도 왔던 거라서 냠여러 와. 내절에 지면량 배서봐. Those are coming to join the Rasuna, Tadi Yusha, to me, Tangli Suvera, social committee, so that they Tandu and Yushitake or Massa, Sevacom Shara. Cholangi Versa Besevas and the church that do some time, Sevacom Pichuda. Just like Yeshe, the Gwen and the Contra Nation, the Bachish and Messunguda, Seven Nation, Kiwala Chimbu Messunguda. Quantitative mess, Savatavico Messera. What in the tea, subsuch with the tea on any Shanda Shada Yungo Maro, Conduda Shanda Shada Yungo Mare. Menduchet and the way, except imitate saying Shadata at the Tajum so Seda. Menduchet, social debata Midubashi Chesona. One Sabura social debata Tubakan get check to the Cheraching Mara. So social debata Mituba Chonsonaya concern, Menduceta. The way a case, social debati to that regular case, Chesona, Condusavera. Yimitoatini, Yimitoacha, Sabametuacha. Yimitoachasana, Yimitoata, Condu saying, Sarah. Condu top jag, color, so they could Yimitoat. Oh, somebody attack it in the Sabatu Melsora, Yimitoacha. Then a condu, I said. Any tumble social media, any me make it was, any Jawachimata, Yibaroko. Ti sabso che go sare. Razu kanga ti yong me do. Kadu si to kondu sa do. Saba kongge samje o ti ke yin samro che ne de go re. Ti ke yin ti de me samba ina ne nyoru nyoru da nga zo te che samgu mara. Pa she de nga zo she ga se do. So sa le so na. Ani anam sam kondu sa kar che she ma to. O ta ti de me mo ne. Samsan de ma so samsa sa ro se me do. Ti tamba ina ne ko nyoru nyoru da ko chuni re. Ti kare ti nge di meti ya umare ti di maso sambe na ko nyoru nyoru de ko chuni ra. Ti nga zungu sumle ra to soba kongge na nge mata meda ko ro chon ru ge wade so sa ha ko thura. Ti so na o yende kanga te so kumji chene yane yando kumji che yane yando kumji chene ya ke mama diye de yende ya ro de rangshi de do asam yoya ra de do asam samlo ko chura. So le yam yo re to che na nga nge ma te de ta de re cha ta te theng do a ti chi yo ro to do asam ane kya kanga sa ya ye do asam yo de kanga ya ro ye do asam ane sanje da tharwa da chi chamba ni ji se to chi ke de chi ye se de sam so che na sam ko do ra shen trum gi sun re nga jo shen ge trum gi sun re she nye ge trum gi sun re nye ne to asam ti de re do a ke pa do si o ma ro se ko jo ta ngu ra Thabkhe, and it's some bars, so some tango, and a combas, and I and the competition at the young Heshara. Razu simply and then to city, but well, Mount Asa. Yeah, what teaching lab.
So patience is really important. We need to kind of practice patience when whatever opportunity arises, right? We have to practice these different types of patience, like the patience of not thinking anything of harm. When others harm us, to not immediately react to that in kind, but to be able to just bear with that and recognize that this can happen, or being able to willingly take on suffering when we encounter difficult circumstances wherein we have to suffer, to be able to sort of bear with those without getting angry is the second type of patience. And then there's the patience in the face of the Dharma, when we are learning various elements of the Dharma, to be able to have patience, to be able to bear with that. So as it said, there is no negativity like anger, and there is no austerity like patience. And here, as Shantideva explains, it really is the case that we get angry at all kinds of things. Like when someone doesn't do something the way we want it or the way we like it, right? We get unhappy, and that kind of unhappiness is then food for our anger. Or if someone does something that is an obstacle, a hindrance to what we wanted, or they do something that's just not exactly in accordance with what we wanted, this is what creates that mental unhappiness that then acts as fuel for our anger. And once we are full-blown into anger, it's very difficult to control that. And so when we get under the control of our anger, we make ourselves unhappy, right? We are unhappy, that mental unhappiness being the first sort of seed of what comes to be full-blown anger. And then we make everyone around us unhappy. And then there is the ripening result in future lives. So if we see this as being something that is dangerous, right? We see the faults of anger, we see how destructive it is, then we can begin to really avoid getting angry. We can reduce it more and more. If we see the benefits of patience, that this is something I want to cultivate in my mind, this is the nature of our mind. If we really reflect upon the faults of something and see the benefits of, say, patience, we can change our mind. We can reduce that anger more and more. We can develop our good qualities more and more. That's the nature of mind. This is something that we can know from our own experience. If we see something as really being beneficial and we are inclined to apply it, to practice it, then we are going to be able to increase that. And so this is something that we can know from our experience. If we really take a taste of the Dharma, we can recognize that all of our faults can be eliminated. We see that by looking at the faults of anger, we can reduce it more and more, and it can eventually be ultimately completely eliminated. And so too, when it comes to good qualities, we can develop develop those more and more and more. But if when we listen to the Dharma, we are sort of thinking like we're listening to a nice story, it doesn't really have anything to do with me and my mind, then there's no benefit that's going to come from that. But when we talk about hearing, listening to the Dharma, and then actually contemplating it and meditating on it, that's how we are able to really cultivate these kinds of messages, or to be able to reduce our faults and to develop all good qualities. And we see that that is something possible because of the nature of mind.
오야 뒤세고 삼겠다 가수래 연대도 강가 가라도 치테 아니 다 샤샤도 고 연대 지 말와 아니 그 쉐드 제나 그게 메도 삼사 teg도 가세 소소 공개와 말와 저거 연대 샘지 연대도 강가 참바니지 메다바 가리네 고메도 소소소 안에 양도 검샤네 고 야제도 춘이래도 소소 공부에는 마음내 요요 말와 이렇게 심지연대도 야제 컨테스트 그랬으나 양내 양도 검세 이런다 로 닌지 첨부 계고는 닌지 충중도 양내 양도 검 닌지 충중 체로 나여로 그 양내 양도 검되는 그 춘이를 야제로 춘이를 제라 같이 리듬 한마에서 그 남전al 연구 봐 같이 리듬 한마에 사벨레네 페와천스 리듬 바 코란 다부지 삼르탄 렌데 제베스르 제라 어찌네 시삼르다 티네 시삼르탄데 그 야르야르 춘이를 제라 같이 리듬 한마에 사벨레네 페와천 자와라 솔로 데다 콤버전나 강라네스 참바다 자와 동반이 메다바 강가 자주비 semla서 가지고 그 공부와 말아 그 공기에는 거 야제로 요라 가지고 만큼 단데 그제 메두 삼기도 삼실이야 뭐 마음내 요해요 말와 공선의 sem비인데 강가 야제로 듣고 춘이를 제라 가지리 등 아마에 사불레네 배워서 자와라서 로데다 콤버전나 강라네스 야제 마든 마침 버체 소스 담분에 신내가 말해줘라. 야제 마침 버체 담분에 신내가 말해줘라. 가제 공부에는 대삼비야제 누구여라. 오예 티치라나.
So here, if we hear the Dharma, we hear about various qualities and think like, oh yeah, that's a good quality, but then we set it aside, that's not going to do us any benefit, right? But if we hear about a quality, we hear the good qualities of love and compassion and so forth, and we actually meditate on it, as in we habituate our minds to that, then it is natural, it is the good nature of mind that those will increase within us. So we begin with like a little bit of compassion, and slowly by habituating our minds, by meditating meditating on that again and again, we will increase that, develop this. This is the nature of mind. It is such that if we do that kind of practice, as in make that effort to habituate our minds to things like love and compassion, they will by nature increase. So there is a verse from the Pramanavartika wherein Dharmakirti explains that it is on the basis of a cause of a similar type, right? Even if at the beginning we're sort of imitating something or just doing it in a way that feels sort of artificial, by habituating ourselves to that again and again, our mind follows after what it's habituated to. So if we develop a little bit of love and develop a little bit of love again and again and again, that will grow stronger and stronger and stronger from those previous moments of a similar type. It will increase. And so this is the nature of mind, that if we put in that kind of effort, it won't be that we remain as before, but we will develop those kinds of good qualities. But this is really incumbent upon us to not listen and just think, oh yeah, that's a good quality, and set it aside, but really to develop it within our mind, even if it's a small little bit to start. By doing that, we are increasing those seeds of a similar type, and that will sort of develop and develop more and more. This is the nature of mind. They follow after a cause of a similar type.
뭐야? 다디치라면 만들어졌어. 진소 추숨 때다 패모치스도 오마주고 없어. 김바 줄은 세바সম부터다. 대화라시베 김바 남랑아스. 김바 쪽에 근데 김바데 가서래. 상생기 김바 시샤라 송도. 김바 땅에도 벤저치 누구지 김바 쪽에 rab선 소리 때문에 제가 그 저런 님멜로 소리치네. 네. Tenika se chinso chusum teda pemushi teorshebe kimba namla sonam lonju chimba tanya da saba koya lega mambu chido nyuda mambu yinde mangsha kondu yoy nyanga yora te rabdu chuaina ko shida ne embura shida tene ko shida ga jigde gi lega mambu chi saba shida mebe ke shida ni melo so chena o ti inde ko nyonga de chora kondu to so yong ye ke nyonga de chora chimba tanya kasre 추좀 시한테 차와치에 대 용한테 친구라 신다 추좀 서바 거미야 어디인데 진서 추좀 되다 패모치 대화시 백kimba 남랑아 수남 세제 소게 되다 예수다 수남제 소데 테레 산제기 꾸다 송다 토다 네 셰에 칼로서 원주지 주디 테레 요라 침바당을 때네 네 표좀 소바 강가대 연구 요라 추좀 소화를 때 저반에 르데 켜버치 톱네 최선부 소주자 배제선부 개출을 서버들 류디 두고도 야 손님 시제 소자한테 다니 김바 추든 쇠바시야 뒤송대 산재게 수군도 지금 교수 되게 숨도 야야겠다는 거도 나라서 소소리 야니 가르 미 류다 가르 류라기는 류 야보다 아니 론저다 대주 강가 야보 용한테 되게 용한 것도 와 뒤에 고 진소 추좀 대답해 무시 대화하시면 기쁘다 손남 시제 소자 대단히스 산제 수기 땅이 꾸주스 수군도지 나라도 전에 교야 붙이드베 세고 냄벨서가 풍부함에 교야 붙이드베 줄레도 어디서 되게 심어도 라도 좋아하게 산다도 먹고 세게 좀 말아 론주 위치보다 되고 시다 론주 배수 지금에는 그저랑 봐도 최지 심어서 오시고도 소소 냠내서 소소 때문에 셔야돼 또 오시고 알아 최지 심어 용 거다 심을 망보여 알아 어디서 라면 다 망다 야 어디 되래
So here, again from the Entry to the Middle Way by Chandrakirti, he explains that the Buddha, the victor, praised the first three of the six perfections, generosity, ethics, and patience, in particular for householders. And so here, those are considered to be what accumulate the collection of merit, which in turn is the cause for the form body of a Buddha. So here, when it comes to generosity for householders, for those who are engaged with material things more, engaging in material generosity. There are various types of generosity, but that kind of generosity leads one to be able to, again, have material resources in the future. And so too, ethical conduct and patience are sort of praised for householders who are practicing. When we think about it, it's more necessary for those kinds of householders to practice things like patience, as in they have more opportunities for that as they go throughout the world. They're engaging in various work and interacting with others in society. Whereas monastics, if they are, say, living in a more isolated environment, the opportunities to practice particularly patience may be fewer as they are more isolated from those kinds of interactions in society. And so it is these, the merit that is accumulated through the practice of generosity, ethical conduct, and patience that accumulates the collection of merit that leads to the good qualities of a Buddha's form body. So having the kind of body of a Buddha with all of the various marks and signs, the speech of a Buddha, and so forth, these arise from accumulating the collection of merit, really generosity, ethical conduct, and patience. So even in general, the kind of good or bad body that we take in the future is dependent upon our practice of those various perfections. Now, it's not to say that these are not to be practiced by monastics, rather that these are considered to be very important, primary for those who are householders. Whereas, so say, for example, monastics are not engaged with material things as much. However, they can still engage in generosity, the generosity of Dharma being very important, and that whatever it is that they are practicing, explaining that and sharing that with others is a way in which they practice generosity. And so these are important as the accumulation of merit that leads to the form body of a Buddha. And while they're important for both monastics and householders, it's particularly sort of praised as practices for householders.
Oh, yeah, that is. 당한 저 쇼로가 시버된다. Oh, yeah. 요 내신도 로아데. 요 주세셔라. 요다 주 요아 주세셔. 요 제. 요 내신도 로아데 미션다 고고던 거라 수수치 제도 맨도도 인도도 텐데세 버전 고고던 거라. 요 잡아도시라. 요주. 요 내신도 로아데 바로 그 로에 된다. 수수문에데 만든 베셔셔. 그라. 고고던 신다. 교내 심주 자주라 교세에 되고 심배 카도를 장부 템바 매버셔 자르주로 뭐부채 거기에다 샤야다 쇼야다 시킨 등을 지가 겨울시 만부 연구라 어쩌주세요라 다들 타도들라 타도 현재 연대 농사 타도의 현재 연대다 된대리야 아니 소소 동아지 요라 퀄리티 매초 퀄리티도 소소 미기버서도 동해 연구하라 동아 심 샬 차도치 연대의 샬 차도치근데 벤저고 샬 차도치근데 롱주 치카레 톨 차도치네 차도 만부여라 어떠서 가르 치고랬으나 차도 현재 연대 동시 연대를 써봐 어떠소리야 동아지기여라 대배 가소래 개 전부를 지르도 안 가서 롱초 제게 있는다 가리는 롱바에 있는다 가가 차도 배워라 로고 연유 된게 연대 있는다 지금 차도 세우라 글쎄 준이요한테 차도 생기 연대 동시 현리하고 무슨 소바 중에도 소소 동에 동료라 연대 미리하고 저도 소소 동에 야대 소소 교로 아니네 세번 믿기 시작해야라 오늘 전에 제수이란 책으로 심지어 탐제 대화다 대화 주된 동해 매배 대화다 매대화를 주지서도 야부 중도는 때다 매대화를 주지 삼구여라 야를 중서나 버저대 야 중서나 그때 매서서 그걸 텐데 야부 가르쳐 주어서 삼 자도시고 때 만지라 그래서 자서라 야부 매 제수이란데 야부래도 현대지 야부 중서는 표준서버 중에 가와 공거라 가와 채미라 샬 야부 중서는 다 가와 공마도네 야부래 삼투로 전에 야부라 매나 타도 마전에 야부래도 제수이란 적으로 그 야부도 깔래 점도 benzo 야부래도 나에 든데 제ton 야부도 와서 코페 연대 야부 장기도 야부 신기도 나에 든데 차네 야부도 와서나 제수이란 제 개와제 야부도 와 소소래 뚱에 매서 롭종 챙겨지나 그세 로발 롭종 야부치나 내가 코페 롭종 야부도 와서 저런 들어가서 빼 롭종 야부치도 야부도 와서 라면 깨면도 빼겨와라 근데 소소에 티네시 제톤의 야부도 와서 선배네 소소에 심슈페 퍼져들 야부 존나 가와콤 가와 참에선 때라 밀리 야가 존슨 때를 가와콤 시거래 타도 마치스 네 펜율랍 심부 용거 알아 어떻게 람나
So then, turning to verse 404, we have dissimulation is deceptiveness, pretension, crookedness of mind, jealousy is irritation at others' good qualities, and miserliness, the fear of giving. So we might not get to that last line, but dissimulation is deceptiveness in that one is trying to deceive others, not show the actual reality, kind of be dishonest in some way, and pretension is this kind of a crookedness of mind where you're trying to sort of twist things or keep them again from being presented honestly. So then we have jealousy is irritation at others' good qualities. So here out of jealousy is something, whether it is with respect to others' good qualities or their learning or their wealth, whatever it might be, feeling irritated at that, feeling unhappy at that, out of a kind of attachment to wanting to have good things for yourself. So really, we look around and jealousy is rife in our world. And when we are jealous, we feel a sort of like pain within our own mind, a kind of irritation, or it's unbearable to us. And really, we suffer because of our jealousy, right? We don't, it's not as though the one who has those qualities or those things that we are jealous of suffers, but we create suffering for ourselves because of our jealousy. And so really, we should have the attitude as expressed in like the four immeasurables, that may others have happiness in the causes of happiness. We should rejoice for them. We should feel, may they have joy. May they not be separated from those things that create happiness for them. May they continue to have whatever it is that is good. So really, rather than feeling jealousy, we should rejoice for them, whatever it is, whether it's wealth, or whether it's learning, whether it's other types of qualities that they have that are excellent. We should think, oh, that's so great. And if we really are trying to practice, we shouldn't feel any kind of pain at that. That's sort of like, oh, why don't I have this? But rather rejoicing in the good that they have, those excellent things. We should wish for them to keep those kinds of excellent qualities. And we can use it as a way of also inspiring ourselves. Oh, may I be like that? May I come to have that kind of learning? So maybe your friend has a lot of education, or is a really good study. Rather than feeling jealous of that, we should rejoice for them and give rise to our own kind of mental strength and thinking, I'm going to pursue that as well. So here we should increase our positive qualities really through the practice of the four immeasurables, and not feeling jealous, but feeling happy, rejoicing for the good that others enjoy, and wishing them to not be separated from that. That's really how we should approach that, however common jealousy might be in our world.
뭐야? 어디 미끼리 소소 이내다 정보 편주 이내다 초과 편주 이내다 저다 개가 편주 이내다 강가 디스요르도 너 현다데 야부 거래 야부 종이네 제수 일하제 그런 야부 제원나 시가조 야부 찬에 야부도 삼til 빼때 아니 디체체네 거 야부요라 때문에 자도 전에 소소 미끼 버스 어디 딘데서 다 딘데 가르도스네 뭐지 말이야 시바된바 차도 현기 연대 동서 현대 현라 표준 소바 예거데 라라 동해 계거라 자 현라 표준 소바 예거데 가와 계거래 저래 동아 마치 가와 어디가 걸려보도 왔으나 소소 계워서 선배집을 계산하러 차도 지도 소소 매집에서 아니 그 되고서 임버셔 세나 동해 직반이스 세나데 가르스나 엉에티 땅당 에디 뇨르도 우리섬 시리 어레셔라 chiba tangi telo ko susu longju shenla tangi shenla pengire shenla pena maung bala susu chibe debu susu yogu de sam ta tambu chiba tamdu de tindere chirwa sam gu yora chibe debu ti yora she yora ina chanju samba su chiba tamdu debu de sambu tangi yomara debu li yime chigi yomara koran pena sam peba bashi gi stamado o de chena gal maung bala te yogu de sam gi yomara ta tambu chiba tamde chibe debu ti yora maung bala susu ti yogu de she gura 마도 침바당도 사네 소소 나르티 마발티 용그리 삼티톨 침바당나 팽도 요르데 팽 총르도 냐가 요라 이네테 콜 페나 삼나 페바 제베 드레부디 코 푸숨 소보 용에 다 쳐사라 고게 로세게 오마라 어디 인도 가서래 세나 동에 지바 니세 세나데 가르스나 라게 로주 셴라 땅에 들려 신나게 요레스고라 저는 애들 요도 레사네 세나 시체 신나시 제대로 소소 로제마도 셴레 로제마도 제마들 상마 샤고라 띵아주 무슨 도대라 상마 샤네 드레데 여니 주사들 가르스 체네게 요마 배요 마라 소소 땅요 마라 어디인데 세나 동연 집권이사 근데 우리들 거 이달에 깨알 소바 쉐고라 소소 론제 집마탄사 제마디 베스교 소소 껴보 사회 통해 그냥 밀게비나 팀에 거다 야 뒤질라나 솔로가 시버트 살수
So here, when it comes to jealousy, we might be jealous of a particular individual or like another town or another group or another country. And so rather than having that kind of jealousy wherein you make yourself unhappy, right? You can gain a profit by being happy for others. Like we shouldn't suffer at the good, the excellent things that others have, but really we should feel joy for them and kind of share in that joy and use it as an inspiration. Oh, may I become like that, rather than have this kind of attitude that just inflicts suffering upon ourselves. And then in the fourth line of this fourth verse, we have miserliness is fear of giving. This attitude of like stinginess or miserliness is thinking that like, well, if I give this away, what will I have? What will be left for me? I'll have less. My possessions will be reduced. And so here, by teaching about the kind of benefits of generosity, one can learn that, well, by giving away, this is how I ensure that I have again in the future. Now, when bodhisattvas engage in generosity, they do so without any kind of thought toward that ripening result. They solely have the wish to benefit. They're not thinking, oh, well, what am I going to get from this in the future? But rather they give with the thought, may this be of benefit to the one receiving it. And so even we can't necessarily start with that kind of giving, but if we give in a way where we know that there will be things that come back to us, this can help to begin to train us in that. And eventually we can get to the kind of place wherein we're not hoping for some sort of reward or return. But when we have this attitude of miserliness, where we cling on to our own possessions, thinking like, well, if I give this away, I'm going to have less. What will I have left? We really sort of hoard our things and no one benefits from them, right? No one gets to enjoy it because we are so intent upon keeping it for ourselves. And this kind of stinginess leads to the ripening result of being born as a hungry ghost, or even if one is born within the human realm, born in a situation in which you are really lacking. So here, rather than being stingy and holding tightly to your own possessions, fearing that they will, that you will be reduced in some way, being giving is what leads us to having in the future.
어, 단지 몇 대가 말하는데. 야, 다들 솔로 강나거든. 무슨 메다 체메다 세. 네 란다 샬라 메제 바오세. 무슨 메바사도 란 추센도 chen 엉에 텐데 chen 되게 말해 섬네. 미교할한테 메더라. 네 뭐서 셔바스. 텔 메바사데 텔 메바사데 샬라 엉에 텐데 chen 미상마 테그데 치소나를 야부 통그 말에 섬사 텐데로 셰제 zemgugara tende ke me se karlamna karchene chesam susum chawange ba cheshana ane bandi rawati sura ngotsa me ba ngotsa me do sura me to solia tell me do se tell me do mi sama yusa tende sin kera me so telgir ba sura o me tende chawange ba tikba mabusa gi sere ngotsa yoba de te yoba do chote ngotsa me ba de te me ba de do Osa meda treme ba randa shen la menzen ba rang ju sen do che shen ju sen do che ne ene mike wala menzen ba de la osa me ba treme ba rang ju sen do che shen ju sen do che ne shen gi te gre sam o sen zem ba de la te yo ba tang osa yo ba che che ene ka re chen ba de bar me che nga je de ro nga je de ne shen ya ku shap chig ma ro de bar me che ba shen la de bar me che ba 나도 차서야 돼. 나 예지 님부에서도 샬라 구십셔야 돼. 라고 담아쳐야 돼. 샬라 어떻게래서라 구십셔나. 티고 나 예지 님부도 그러라 차서야 수가. 된도 가서. 모자메다 테메바 란다 샬라 메즈바 텐데버셔. 캥반 되버 메셔바 샬라 구십메셔바. 라 샬라 통중셔 나체 인도도르 셔셔. nga che che ne shida sha kyo ra ho le yong ge ro ba du ba me she ba wa ni zum ne trebe le ba wa because ya ka ban do so me se ba wa king ba du ba me she ba she ra nga che de ra sha la ku shib chi ma re sha la tong ju che ya re chung wa to zo ni zhe ni zhe ne ka re trebe le ba wa sa 또 멋있는 기분이 그래. 킹반에 디바마죠. 니즈 최베 랑바 통해서 령하기 요 아래 오래 니즈스도 르당하게 남주가 건데 깨쳐 두자셔 니지 건데 남주만 더셔 어떤 데들 쓰르세 니즈스 어디지라면 디소
Decent.
야 어디지라요.
So then turning now to verse 405, we have first, lack of integrity is to not be ashamed of yourself. In consideration of others is not being embarrassed with regard to others. So here, and these are variously translated, but having integrity and being considerate of others is really being careful with respect to non-virtues, in the first case for your own reasons, and in the second for the reasons of others. Like if for your own reasons you don't engage in negative activities, that is having integrity, or sort of a sense of shame, one could say, in a positive sense. And when we have consideration for others, this is recognizing, oh, well, if I do this, it's going to be seen as bad by others. This will be something that kind of creates a disturbance within others or within society. Whereas the opposite of that is to not care, like to say, oh, I'm just going to say whatever, I'm just going to do whatever, because I don't have any consideration of what other people will think or what it will do to others. And so here, these two are often mentioned as important, and the opposite of those, to lack integrity, is to not have any shame for yourself, to just act however it is, not caring for your own reasons, and to be inconsiderate of others is not being embarrassed with regard to others, that you are just willing to act however. There's no sort of sense of being caution or restraining yourself with respect to negative actions, either out of your own reasons or thinking about others. And then haughtiness is the inability to respect others. So here, when we have this kind of attitude of haughtiness or a kind of arrogance, one is unable to bow to teachers and so forth. You don't have a kind of respect for others. So often it's said that engaging in prostrations, like putting our hands together and making a prostration to another being, acts as an antidote for this kind of haughtiness, this sort of looking down upon others, seeing them with contempt or seeing them with a lack of respect. And so that is then the third in this fifth verse. And finally, we have fury is a mental disturbance caused by anger. So here, fury is really when out of anger, the kind of expression of one's body and speech takes on that sort of angry tone due to being under the control of that. So due to the kind of mental disturbance of anger, it then it shows forth in the way that you act physically and verbally, as well as mentally, obviously.
뭐야? 어디나? 작과 마음에 봐시라. 근데 교환하면 매주로 어디래? 그 가서 작과 세대 가를 시그래서나 가실 말랑은 어디? 작과 세대 로제 속에 택배라게 셈 캠바를 생각했어야 되시구나. 작과. 네 마음에 봐 세대 가서서나 작발라 속에 원게 교환하면 매주로 교환 매주 방매 롱주세 직 서서치제 교환지에다 tin데면 내가 제를 지내고 서서 맞아요. 그 방매 롱주를 잘라르지 가리네 건조만 주제 샤나네 방매 롱주를 시도 매바 차발라 속에 원게 대다 남라 매주르세 사바다 셰베 셈 미소아 셈게 섭소치제고 내가 지금 말아 방매 봤어요. 가리나고 내가 가르치는 그런 로다를 지어라. 어찌나 시치고라. 아까 좀 주체선에 되고 말아. 저번 밤에 봐. 교환하면 되죠. 교환 좋아라 객식이지. 뒤질라나.
So then the first half of verse 406 reads, Arrogance is being conceited. Heedlessness is to not apply oneself to virtue. So here, arrogance is sort of, again, being kind of like puffed up with one's own possessions and so forth, have that kind of pride or arrogance towards that. And then heedlessness is to not apply oneself to virtue. So here, whatever we are doing, to sort of not have any kind of heedfulness or conscientiousness about it, out of a lack of conscientiousness, maybe out of our attachment and so forth, we don't apply ourselves to virtue. And so this is not guarding the mind. I mean, whatever sort of activity we are doing, there's a way in which that should be done. There's a sort of process to that, but to just disregard that, not have that kind of awareness or conscientiousness, and here particularly when it comes to virtuous activities, that one doesn't guard one's mind against the various contaminated phenomena and so forth. That is heedlessness.
Oh yeah. Tang I Geshe do I get Tanga chicken by in a Kurana said by Sheshero. My J number 2 in the 10 rub to check the shake essay. Really shake essay. The car is I get number 2 in the rub to shake. My Jenny, not you. Doing the chick do town is on. Not you have doing and I guess a chick drunk in my door. I get 22 drunk in my wrist, Tanga 20 cigar. Tambo is and I get 2 and the Tambo the garden. Tell a number lumsheba. Mele, mesh, yam da yam. Oh, that is sponsorship. Yam ba, haba, yam. This was number Nagarjuna. Tell a number Lomsheba. Number Lomba, take I get 20 share your dada. That cardos in the tambo. Member mentions a member in some Nagarjuna. Member a mentions. Member going out to it in some share. Nyam da nyam se nyam ba to la nga te dan ja da yin sam te da na shin ba te na shin ma yo ko na shin ga ye sam sa ta wo li wu da ne nyam ba la ba nyam ta so le nyam ba te le so le pa jo te le ra la ba yo sam ne nga ja ra ta ni nga je she ba o se o ti ma ka de shin gu do se na ta bu ngom ba lom se ba se me ba ta me shin ta memba ta nyammo nyamba ta stambu dira karesna tela ngamba lom seba memba meshi nyamda nyam sete sera kasiguresna tela ngamba lom seba singa jedra memba ta meshi memba de nga tela ko choy sam memba de meshi nyamba da nyamo se da da che na nga ku te chen da shin ba de ko de che ba da yin sam nga che che ta ma shi wo de nyamba da ne memba ta la ba nyamba ra le la ba de ya nga da yin sam be ta ni jing nga je che cha wo se membe me nyamba nga je du te ten da bu do ta memba de nga kyo yin sam nga je ka de se ko nga kyo yin sam lo chong de chi ge ne ta nga ko ju na nga kyo shi yin sam na pen ju de chi de ko ju na nga kyo shi de yin sam na te nga je ke re me do a te nga je ka de se ra ta de le ja yo ra membe ta ka se ro mo ba lo ba chi nya mo se ko de so membe ta me nya ba nga je do chi de ju shi na se memba 제가 다 매야 롱게 냠도 킹배 남바잖아. 나 저거 이나 섬지야 고랑 같이 거래. 그가 조셔디 있어라. 나 조셔들이 나 조셔이 나이 삼사리야. 나 제용 거래. 나 조셔이 섬 제대기요 말아. 조셔이 나이 섬. 나 제용 거래지. 나 오냐 배삼로 슉 첨부용도 또 캥버리 정도도. 내가 member ta member member nga jedo chidar joshena member te da meya rongi nyamdo sem kengbe na bache karina sem kengbe che ngutwa karina yesem ko jobo ina karioris ko sambiore jobo ina ke me samsachi sem kengbe che kora nga samsa shuk sembo ngutwa tesiora ne member te da meya rongi nyamdo sem kengbe na bache no ya wote chilana 당부대.
So,
이제 당부대.
mm. So then we get into the explanation of pride. And here, this is the 15th out of these 57. And although there are 7 internal divisions, they are counted as one. And so here he then says in the beginning of, the second half of verse 406, pride is of 7 kinds. I will now explain each of them. And so here then in the first verse 407 that deals with this is the kind of it's a little bit difficult to translate, but let's just go with the kind of pride of self, wherein it says, concerning these, the first is called pride. It is where one thinks of oneself as even inferior to the inferior, equal to the equal, or greater than or equal to the inferior. So here, when it comes to this kind of pride, having a thought of like, even someone who is inferior, we think like, oh, they're poor, but I'm poorer. I'm sort of in the worst kind of a situation, or I'm worse off than them. Or like if it comes to kind of education or something like that, and we see ourselves as being inferior even to the inferior, like, oh, I know even less than them. This sort of attitude in which we take ourselves, there's definitely a strong sense of I, right? And then we sort of put ourselves, oh, I'm the worst off. And so here in the commentary, it explains that, again, having this sort of manifest kind of inflatedness, right, of just thinking that like, wherein you think that I'm inferior to the inferior, or it could be equal to the equal, or greater than or equal to the inferior. This is the kind of pride of self, one could say, that has those sorts of thoughts. Now, someone might think like, well, how is it that this is prideful to say, think that I'm the worst of the worst, or like there's, sort of I'm inferior to the inferior? Well, again, it is due to there being that kind of like inflatedness or this exaggeration. We have a strong thought of I, and then to have that kind of aspect that is inflated, even when one is thinking like I'm inferior to the inferior, that is in a way a type of pride based upon, again, a strong sort of thought of I and inflating or puffing up sort of that aspect wherein you are exaggerating something. In this case, thinking I'm inferior to the inferior or have less qualities than even those of lesser qualities, that in itself is a kind of pride.
뭐야? 단 이바들다 사고가 제세들이셔. 이번에 세네서 최강 단일에 개발파봐라. 냠발롬바 가이베 소소레 사고때다. 나 그때 다다 인상비어 다다려 막고 사고로 연대이나 배저나 가리나 리나 숙제이나 가리나. 최강 단일 개발다. 단일에 개발파고다. 냠발롬바 가이베 고당하니 다다에서 고난을 하그래도 숙제이나 가리나 벤저이나 연대이나 가. And it's like being like yes, it is still like being like yes. Yeah, teacher loves it. Touch yes.
So then the next is a presumptive pride. So here, if it is presumptive pride for one to presume that one is equal to someone who is better, and so here, this kind of presumptiveness is whether it is in terms of qualities or wealth or lineage or even form, whatever it might be, to think that one is equal to someone who is better, like thinking, oh, well, actually, I'm equal to that person. I'm sort of, again, whatever it might be based on, that is a kind of presumptive pride.
오야 다들 숨바들아 맞아 숨바들 티칸도스네 개발 파과 개발 파배 개발도 파과 람바 강사 야 개발도 파과다 개발도 파과 람바네 신도 그래 개발도 파과 개발도 파배 다 개발도 파과 람바 강에 받으네 신도 토에 토냐베 나게데 나게 레자 나게데 알레티르샤 나게 레자 나게시도 티카시도스나 케도 파바 달레 케바르도 파발로바 소소레 학바치레 나티 학바 예섬 에네 나게시고라 오틀이야 학베 나게시 소소레 학바치레야 나콜레 학바 예섬 거 연데르시나 카리나다로 벤조이나다 숙제이나 카리나 개발도 파바 개발도 파베 개발도 파바 개발도 파베 다 개발도 파바 롬바 신도 토에 토냐방 아젤레장 아게테 모데샤 아젤레장 아게시레스텔레 다들 만다지도와 소볼이야 만다지 저 뒤가래 토바르지 게시 나제 명시레도 담보 두개 가래 야 두개 지게베선듯이 어디죠 토와베자 나게테세 제게 품이다 품이 다 중앙에서 심대에서 나타지 메르도 뒤가 품이서 토바로 양지게 중앙신도 이미 락바르 시외 토와인데스 다들 락발레 가 락바르 섬데 뒤바 락바르 치와레스 이미 락바르 락바르게 니아도르 가제지 티신세 너고 가제 전부 시다이베 따르더라 근데 때 가제 와길래 메다 사정에 손려하게 레망서르스 미 가던 좀 받아 현재 센세 된다네 어디실랍니까 담아다 가제래 장하게
Mm. So then next, again, this pride, presumptive pride is to think that you are equal to someone who is better. So to think, oh, I'm like them, even though they are better than you, is that kind of presumptive pride. And then next, we turn to pride beyond pridefulness. And this begins in the first half or the second half of verse 408, where it reads, if one presumes oneself to be even better than one's betters, this is pride beyond pridefulness, thinking oneself to be even loftier than the lofty. It is excessively bad, like developing sores on top of your boils. So in this case of pride beyond pridefulness, to think that whether it's based upon excuse me, qualities, wealth, lineage, form, whatever it might be, to think of yourself as being better even than those that are better than you, to think oneself loftier even than the lofty. This really is a kind of, again, as it's called, pride beyond pridefulness. It's an extreme sort of pride. And so the example that it's given is it's excessively bad, like developing sores on top of your boils. So if you have some kind of disease that's already creating like sores or boils on your skin, and then to develop sores on top of those, this is what it is like to have this kind of pride beyond pridefulness, wherein you are, someone is superior to you, but you think that you in turn are superior to them. This is the kind of excessively has excessive sort of defects, like having boil or sores on top of your boils.
뭐야 다 시바데르다 시바데 녀할렘 바 시차와스 나보 동바테다 사체년에 이제 풍부나보 다게 동바테다라 세라 에네 몽베 나냠 짐바카 몽베 와게 나 삼사 네 토에 나버신데 짐나 Tene ngao nyambar shes ngao nyambar ngaje. De drebana kasudo tamse ki shi nyawalembe. Sacha nyele pumbu nyawalembe pumbu ngabo sigora. Pumbu ngabo dala. Pumbu ngabo daagi tongbala. Rangwe daagi tongbala chida daagi tongbala. Mombe ngao nyambar kanya batene ngao nyambar ngaje she te. Ngao nyambar ngaje se te redwa. What is you
Mm. And then next is the kind of pride thinking I. So it says the 5 empty aggregates are called the appropriated. When one apprehends them as I, this is called the conceit thinking I am. So here, when one takes these 5 appropriated aggregates, although they are empty, having, due to one's delusion, grasping at them as though there is an I, this is said, explained to be then the conceit or the pride thinking I am.
Oh yeah. Tadi rangwe taa yoban se batele ta ngacha siyo mara. Tito lo karawa. Ta ina pumbu nga batele ya. Rangwe taa ta tinte mewe ina ya. Kura ngao nyambe sem kengbe na basi ugara. Nga samsa sem kengbe na basi. O tisu da tila ngacha siyo. Ya, o tisu.
So this is different, however, than the kind of grasping at an autonomous self within the 5 aggregates. So here, this is really sort of thinking that there is a kind of, I mean, we don't call that grasping at an autonomous self pride, but here, really this kind of feeling that there is an I, not in the sense of holding it as being sort of autonomously existent, but apprehending the aggregates and thinking I am, having that kind of conceit that is distinct from the sort of grasping at a self of persons here.
Ta ngacha nga batele ta. Nga batele drema tobara tob nyamba. Ane kanyi nga be ngacha te ese. Dan debu kyunshu dan chiang dan chi tokba kebar chen ma top na te top song sa ma chanju sem ma jen na chanju sem ke song sa ba ra ane chola ma to na chola top so nya ba o tende sam ba na ngue shi ma to na top song sam sa da o tende sam ba na ngue be nga je se re se de ma to ba top nya ba sen debu chong ge debu chimo debu tra se be debu tende se ga ra ya cholam tholam se tende sa ne de ra yonten kebarse kongme yonten tindra. Soso to mena tanga aje top sa son samna ngbe nga je tindra. Drebu kyoshu la so be lam tombe drebu de ran la ke mena ya. Ke so nya ba na se drama to ba tom nya ba. Kanye ngbe nga je te se. Kyoshu la so be drebu ma to ba de la top so nya ba kanye ba te ne. Ngbe nga je te se. Ya oti silana.
So then the 5th type of pride comes in the first half of verse 4:11, wherein it says, to presume that one has attained a result that one has not attained is to have conceited pride. So if one were to think that you had, say, attained the state of a stream enterer, or thinking like, oh, I've obtained the state of a once returner or a non-returner, I've become an arhat, in which you have not actually attained such a result, that is then a kind of presumptive pride, or sort of here, sorry, that's presumptive pride is different. This is conceited pride. So to have that feeling of like, oh, I've obtained this kind of result, like I've obtained this level of the path, I've obtained the path of seeing, or whatever it might be. Here in the commentary, it says to have the kind of feeling of thinking, I have obtained, say, the result of a stream enterer, when one has not actually attained that result, that is then conceited pride.
Oh yeah. Demen this one. Kyushu state rob silon. Kyushu said nyende ye lam la shu ne. Nyende tonglam se tongba nyingu sumdu tambo to sona. Ni kyushu shu ba se ra. Nyende tonglam ba phagbe kansa tongba nyingu sumdu to ne ra. ane tanda thongpa se shora, pangcha di pang thongpa se, thonglam je kap je pangcha di pang ma sawe kap tila kyeshu shukpa se kidwa. Ti nyedu trachumba de suna ne, ma re karsa, thongpa kujo sum se wara, thonglam je pangcha sum yora, ti pang suna ne, kyeshu dene se wara. Phakwe lam je kyun de la thongma ya shukpa suna, kyeshu shukpa se. Tene ten trebu thongpa pangpe pangpa to top suna, kyeshu dene se wara. Tēnā shī chirōng shūkpa, chōng dēne, chirmē wōng shūkpa, chirmē wōng dēne, trāsum shūkpa, trāsum dēne sī, tēndē sī yé shōrā nyēndō lé. O tēnā nē kyun shū sē tē sī yōrā. Tē pē shār, shēndā lé yāng, yōndē kōngbē, yōndē kārī na, ngō shī mā tōng nā tōp sāmbā lé sōpa yō shōrā.
So here, just as an aside to what is mentioned in the commentary, to think that one has attained, say, for example, the result of a stream enterer or the state of a stream enterer. So here, when we are talking about particularly hearers, there are various stages that they achieve. So at the first moment of the direct realization of emptiness on the path of seeing of a hearer or a Shravaka, one attains the state of an approacher to a stream enterer, right? When one has not yet abandoned those things that are to be abandoned upon the path of seeing, you are sort of approaching that state of a stream enterer. Now, when one has abandoned the 3 abandonments that go along with that path of seeing, then of a Shravaka, then one attains abiding in the result of a stream enterer. And so too, one proceeds through the various stages of being an approacher to a once returner, abiding in the result of a once returner, an approacher to a non-returner, abiding in the result of a non-returner, all the way through approaching the state of an arhat and abiding in the result of an arhat. And so that's just an example, though, that is given of something that you might be claiming to have attained, even though you haven't actually attained such a state. It could be that you are claiming to have a clairvoyances when you don't actually have clairvoyances, or any kind of qualities that you don't actually possess. To make the claim that you have those then would be called this kind of conceited pride.
Oh, yeah, I get to what it are. Tikarse dosana, Tile chela tebane, Kebe loge, I get off, it's out there. Oh, take a debacarsona, Tibele chebala. Nghe cha nhằm đồ tơ bà nè. Thì bê lẽ chế bà la, nghe cha nhằm đồ tơ bà nè, khế bê lọc bê ngà chế đồ, tỏ số xã. Thì bê lẽ chế bà la tơ bà chế đồ. Lẽ chế thì sáng bố mẹ bà sẽ in này hả cô, lọc bê ngà chế. Thì bê, xin chế lọc kênh chế lì à chế nè, yáng tàu bà, ý hình xăm yá, tơ nè ngà chế chế tơ lì à chế nè. Lọc bê ngà chế sẽ rì sẵn. Thì lẽ chế bà la tơ bà nè, khế bê lọc bê ngà chế tỏ xã. Để bà nó còn được, tikpa chế bà lẽ, nghe cha nhằm đồ tơ bà nè, khế bê lọc bê ngà chế. Tikpa chế yinè, có chế lì à tì nghe chì kì xăm ngà chế chế yò rò. Mi sè rập chì nè, có mi sè tikpa chế gò rè tì nghe, mi sè tù bù, nghe chì chế tù bù xì nà, lọc bê ngà chế rì sè tò. Có yì, lẽ chế bà, tikpa lẽ chế bà la, nghe cha nhằm đồ tơ bà nè, khế bê lọc bê ngà chế tò, tỏ số sè. Khế bà sò ngà chế, lọc bê ngà chế sè, sùng bù rè sè, yà, tí chì lâm nè, tù bà tè.
So then next is the 6th type of pride, which is erroneous pride, coming in the second half of verse 411, where it says, "The wise know that boasting about one's negative deeds is erroneous pride." So when you have done something that is bad, but you don't see it as being faulty, and you think that it is somehow good, to sort of brag about that, to boast about that, would be erroneous pride. So to think that something that is actually negative is something that is a quality, that's something that's good. So to have, although you have done some sort of negative action, to praise yourself or sort of boast about it, saying like, oh, I did this, like, oh, I killed this person, I engaged in this negative action, and feel prideful about it, is something that those who are wise know this to be erroneous pride. They realize that such kind of taking pride in actions that really one should be ashamed of or are negative is something that is erroneous pride.
당가 제때 버들도 아야 솔로가 중이 되도 다그 매바 니도 시 당니 매바 강이데 매배가 제시샤데 대단 도든 샤바오사 다들 매배가 제시도 대가수도 다그 매바가 선부천대나 그거 맨도 삼데 다 소소소소 우르치 투버진데 용거도 어디에 다 소야 그거 매바니도 시 다그 매바니도 시 당니 매바 강이 소소소소 봐 뭐네 다 소소배 두자라 싶지 당하다 내 말을 섬서 가게 좀만 수삼서 심파 몽드레스도 어딜레시도 다그 매바니도 나 소야 섬부치 때나 그거 그면도 왔음 니도 시 당니 매바 강이 강이 배가 제시 자때 대다 어디 될래가 제시르세라 다그 매바니도 시 당니 매바 강이 때 매배가 제시 자때 대다 도대셔봐 대다 매배도 틀레 셔버스네 되어래 대다 도드디 셔버 인스네 되어래 세트들도 야 어디 지랍잖아
So that was the sixth kind of pride. And now we turn to the seventh, which is pride of inferiority. So here, deriding oneself, thinking, I cannot manage, is the pride of inferiority. Such are the seven forms of pride in brief. So here, to have the kind of thought of like, my being alive, there's no purpose to this. What am I even doing? To sort of not feel any point in even, say, being alive, for example, to deride oneself in that way, to have a kind of contempt for yourself, thinking like, oh, I'm not even human, or I'm not even doing anything worthwhile. That kind of attitude of self-contempt or deriding oneself is then the kind of pride of inferiority. And so here, then, the last line, I mean, it could be explained that such is the seven forms of pride in brief, or really reading the word that's seven as being part of the in brief. You could say such in brief are the forms of pride, or mention the word seven.
그 캠베 넘버 요구요사라 또 시내 가서 가까이 오면도 섬서서도 가 섬서야로 캠베 넘버 요구요사라 어째서 땡가 제시요사라 캠베 넘버 요구요라 당하 베스가 가르치나 딱하게 오면도 당하 섬서서고요라 수수수 샘딩 아디야 개 전부라시다 지촌에 당하 가까이 오면도 몽드레스도 어때 공가제르진다 나의 삼루티 숙체라는 용거라 나의 삼루 숙심부 캥베나 버숙심 베네티 용거도 요마라 어디 가제시르 야 뒤질라나
So here again, pride has this kind of aspect of like arrogance or haughtiness, having a kind of like inflated sense of self. And so whether that is, based upon holding the I as important, thinking something like, I can't manage, like I can't even do this, or having the kind of pride of pride where you, or sort of excessive pride where you see yourself as better than others. It is this sort of inflated sense of self based upon holding that I as important. It can take different forms, but this is the kind of attitude of pride.
나제 된데 셔서라 이 나제 당근아 두디치 달로서 어디 되고서 다들 저리야 수준에다 곱대처 공부 동벌 제바데 가사 녀다 고대체 청점 나네 마오사 솔가 조성되려다 다데 데이터도서 니바 추슈세들도 당부도 추슈세 녀다 고대체 왕부 동벌제바데스 소소리아 녀바다 고대로 지용해도 달이야 안에 소소 시험된 남주다 메다르 스텐체 제체라 포주 밑에 통해도 오 코페 야고도 삼사스 통해도 달이야 남주다 메다 시험을 제체 그 대선에 추주라 남주 가리나 코티 땡고르마도 말아줘 제탈기도 미르 지원 지체네 또 저부로 제 잡을라마이나 야고 지인도 나래시 미쳐져 요때 수치시라 남주 가래나 됐다고마도 다던다 고치 신다지 신다로다 신다지 용에 걸려 남주 메다로 시대야 신다지 남주 메다로 텐데 세고 말아 남주 가래나 다갈래 시대고다 뭐 가셔한테 세고 용구도 근데 저래야니까 수치시가다 수치대 가르쳐 연거를 출세대 소소 남주 제다실로 남주 된다더라 뒤쪽에 와라 최고의 최고서 솔직하게 와라 다들 망사 다들 수치세 니다 고디지 소소 네바르지 용해다 잘라도다 빼줘도지 용해다 로사에 통해도지 용해다 아니 생게 구셔버지 지나 삼사 남주대 남주다 마다르 때서나 그놈을 알레도 왔다 그놈데 들려네 추추시가래 추추 니다 고디지 왕부 동버셔봐 왕부 동버셔봐서 류지 왕부도 좀 동네 예주 니바도 좀 매버셔제 배 인도 가고 야부셔제 돼야 되시거라 왕부 동버셔봐 대사 가사 니다 고디지 신장 만에 마오서 가사셔야 되라 진예바다 대직바로 고디데 소소치 벤조다치 땡하로 지용해 돈다를 삼겨라 아니 시장번에 마오 시장보 다사부터도 셔셔 근데나 된도 시장 마오 되고 되변나 된도 이번 추추 소네 추슈네 예바다 고디체를 홍보 돈바를 제바데 다그 대다게 정말 개발시했어 저는 왕보 고슴 용보를 써본 남주 메다 저방에 받았는데 매다 돈도 배야 우습소시 때시거라 왕보 꽃돈 바시기다 진남주다 메다로 제제 다샤보로 시때 시거라 지금 뒤치게 뒤서 예바 추추네에서 추추반에 예바다 고티처 왕보 돈바르 제바데 대다님의 개발 시에서도 이게 리우 당부 값수 솔가 주바드나 도와 뜻다게는 지날 게시게바 도와 야부신의 시도 그달 내가 개발 시에서도 가사니 예바다 고티처 시장 안에 막 나대 집어라 가사세대 예바다 고티인데 도야던다 아니 실 시장 안에 막 와서 시장보 또 다에게 제로서 대임에다 그라 다디메다 그라리아 직가서 표계를 표사를 수여서 따라도 좋아 시작한 마샤 뒤단데 rab도 좋아하다 뜻을 거 알아 그라네 그 예매로 소체네 김버도 가게 rab도 좋아 지신다로 제 손님도 제 표기 알아 어떻게 그라한테는 표사 수여서 알아서 결론 rab지 그게 수여서 근데 고라치까지 다좀 벌어 가지 인도도 연대 전부다 중부도 시다 인도도로 시거라 나지 결혼 깨봐서 보래 결혼 다좀 벌시는데야 결혼 자신부터인데 인도 결혼 깨지시 최시시 깨봐서 보시다 What the castle? Then this one has
Mm.
Kawaleso. What was it? Kasane. What did it? Chichinyeda Kurdiche, Wambo Tombarche Batete, Tane, Jabber Shendo, Kasane, Nieba da Kurdiche, Chigjamne, Mawa Osa. What is Lamna? I didn't matter. Just a Jabba Tamatane, yeah.
No. So here then that finishes the prides, again counting those 7 types of pride as a single one. And now we turn to the next section, which begins with hypocrisy. And so here, hypocrisy is to restrain the senses for the sake of goods and respect. And then there is flattery, is to utter primarily pleasant phrases for the sake of goods and respect. So here, if one is seeking out, like say, a good reputation or for the sake of some kind of material gain and so forth, to pretend to act really well, say when the donors are around, not acting as one usually would, but acting in such a way as to try to get something, to gain something, to be acting like, oh, but I'm so good, really. I have this kind of, so again, restraining one's senses, like acting as though you have a kind of ethical conduct or that you have a really good practice to sort of put on airs in front of others in order to be able to gain something. This is the kind of attitude of hypocrisy. So here you should, no matter who you're around, always act the same way, right? This is the literal kind of words here that are translated as hypocrisy. Sul is like the way of doing something, right? And the next word is che, which means to like fix that. So here, to sort of fix your way of doing something in order to be able to get something from someone else, it's really dependent upon your motivation, right? I mean, we're trying to improve our conduct, and so maybe we use certain situations to try to improve that more. But to sort of put on airs, to act really well when you're in front of others, when there's something to gain, this is then the kind of attitude of hypocrisy. So again, saying hypocrisy is to restrain the senses for the sake of goods and respect, to act like you have a really good practice, or that you're very ethical, or that you're always sort of really humble and lowly and so forth in front of others, hoping to be able to get something from that, is an attitude of hypocrisy. And that was previously explained, I believe, in the first chapter. So these sorts of wrong livelihoods, I mean, this is something that is applicable to everybody, but particularly for those who are monastics, right? So including this next one where it says flattery is to utter primarily pleasant phrases for the sake of goods and respect. So when you are saying something nice to others for the sake of being able to get something, so again, like above, being hypocritical, like acting in a way that you wouldn't usually act in order to get something really good from your donors or something. This was explained in more detail earlier, along with these other wrong livelihoods. But to speak in a way where you're like looking at your and again, in the past, monastics would have been going and begging for alms from various different donors, and to be like, oh, who offered you that? Or like if you're speaking to others, sort of talking about like, oh, you know, it would be very meritorious for you to be able to have a chance to offer to an arhat, or to someone with such great qualities, or to even be able to talk with an arhat, to sort of speak to them in a way that is flattering to them, or makes them feel important, or sort of like they are in a good position. This is then flattery. And again, this is dependent upon one's motivation. If you're trying to get something from somebody else out of that kind of way of speaking to them pleasantly for the hope of a kind of gain, material or otherwise, that is then flattery.
Oh, that didn't matter. Oh, yeah, what was I said?
Yeah, so maybe we will stop here for today as we are at time, and then pick up from there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Genla. You're
Oh,
giving
yeah.
me much to think about. And thank you, Katrina, for your beautiful translation today. We'll finish with some dedication prayers.
May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and the spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Lobsang's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Idam Gururana Mandalakam Niryatayami. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born rise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Oh yeah, tukjay na Genla Katinche.
Oh, yeah.
Jay Majeo.
Oh, yeah, let's go. Yeah, oh, yeah. Well, so much.
Recording stop.